Hello, everybody, and I'm Rebecca Ladd. How many of you know Rhode Island exists? Please raise your hand. Tell me yes, you know. Okay. So many people told me Rhode Island doesn't exist, and I was like, no, really, it does. I don't know how to argue about this, but it really does. I'm like, it's one of the original 13 states, and they're like, no. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. My son died in 2010, and for the first 4 years, I was devastated. 5 years. I was devastated to a point that was just indescribable. You all know, just utter sheer pain all the time. Couldn't think, couldn't work, couldn't feel anything. I felt like I was dead. I gave a talk at one point and I used this imagery and it really did work, which is that I felt that I'd been asked to do open heart surgery, and I went in for open heart surgery, and they cut my chest open and cracked open the chest cavity and took out my heart. And then the surgeon said to me, time to go up and go to work. And I was like, I don't have a heart. I have a huge gaping chest wound. And so I went to work and nobody noticed that I had a huge gaping chest wound and that I had no heart. And I was supposed to say, okay, what'd you do this weekend? And how do you enjoy Disney World? And I'm like, do I care that you ever went to Disney World? No, really, honestly, I don't, because I'm dead and I'm dying. So at the same time, and I'm filled with so much pain. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't understand your experience in any way. And I'm here because I've changed to such a degree that I wake up every morning, honestly, stunned by how I feel now. I can't even understand how I feel the way I feel now. I wake up every morning and I have this incredible peace inside and inner joy, which I actually never felt before in my life until now. I mean, I was married for 30 years, I had 3 children, and I have joy and peace inside me every day, which is impossible. It's not even possible. You can't take someone from so much pain and have them feel joy and peace. It's a miracle. I have the most amazing counselor in the world. His name is Dr. John Jordan. His name's Jack. And when I first went to see him, he said the suicide survivor experience is a transformatory one. And I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know a lot of what he meant. And I had this image in my head, though, of being inside a chrysalis. It's really nasty, ugly, dark chrysalis. And I felt utterly trapped in it for years and years of being in this nasty, dark hole. And I thought, I wonder what's going to come out. And I thought, it's got to be a worm. It's going to be like a nasty, little, ugly, gross worm is going to come out of this. Jack's like, maybe it'll be a butterfly. And I'm like, nope, impossible, because I'm a dead person. Can't happen. So, see what happened. So David was born on September 16th, 1987. And I had him kind of young in life for me. I had him at 24. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan for him. He happened. And when he was born, ta-da, as with all your children, you fall in love and you know what the meaning of your life is. And I was utterly absorbed by him. I do have 2 other children. I want to say that. I love them very dearly. But it turns out that kids aren't like goldfish, and you can't just flush one away and then you're fine, replace them. And people would say that to me, well, you have 2 other kids, you're fine. I'm like, no, it's not exactly how it works. It doesn't quite work like that. But this story isn't really about David and his life, but he was a really remarkable person. He was sort of like a Viking, and he was very unusual, very eccentric. He was into weaponry and singing and words. Like, I have an amazing vocabulary. His vocabulary just blew mine out of the water. He would be like, Ma, you really don't know what that means? I'm like, no. So he would have to explain words. I remember one time I went to see he went to this odds high school I told you last night. They had presentations all the time and they had to talk about what they'd been reading about. So he was explaining to his little class of inner city kids what a hermaphrodite was. I didn't really know. So he's like, well, they're like, hey man, what's a hermaphrodite? And he explains to them what a hermaphrodite is, and he says it's a person that has characteristics of both male and female within them. They're like, man, that's gross, I can't believe that. And I was thinking, here is my 10th grade kid explaining what a hermaphrodite is. I remember once he corrected his teacher for mispronouncing the word dominatrix. Only my kid. So he was weird. He was a weird kid, and he was utterly entertaining, let's put it that way. I realized after about 4 years that I was searching around on the internet that I think I had something called complicated grief. It is when you don't get better. You just stay in that incredible, incredible grief cycle. A lot of that is sort of PTSD, that you have had this horrific shock, and it messes with the brain, and the brain can't break out of that cycle. So I was in a cycle where I found my son, and my daughter did too. Don't anybody do that. I found my son, and that scene played through my head 24 hours a day for years and years and years and years, again and again. So I recommend to you that if you're having obsessive thinking, you can't get rid of the thoughts. I mean, in the beginning, there's really no way around it. But after a while, if the thoughts continue, there are some treatments for PTSD, and I recommend you go try them and try them a couple times. I had to go to EMDR a bunch of times, and then somehow the non-stop obsessive thinking did stop. And that's important just because it's not actually honoring your child to obsessively think about one memory of your child, a terrible memory of your child. You do deserve to not have that happening in your mind. So if you can say, hey, this is something outside of me, I need to address it, and I can't address it. I need to go try a bunch of different things, whatever works. Finally, I went through a series of grief counselors, and I went to finally see this guy named Dr. Jordan. And I thought he was a crackpot, honestly. He said to me, the first time I met with him, he said, well, I'm going to help you by giving you some tools for getting better. One of them is we're going to do a lot of visualization. Another one is that you are going to have to find a new relationship with your son. So then I was like, what part of dead does he not understand? Like dead is dead. You're dead, your story's over, David's gone, there's nothing else. I can't have a relationship with the person who is dead. It's not going to happen. So, yet again, he might have been right. So here are the tools that worked for me. These are the 4 parts that really helped me. First one is comfort. Second one is being open about my grief. Third one was reimagining my child as alive. A lot of it is imagination. And the last one is finding a purpose for my life. That hope and purpose, without it, there's no point to life. And for years I felt, why do anything? There's nothing. Don't bother putting my shoes on. Don't drink coffee. Don't talk to anybody. Don't eat dinner. Why would I eat dinner? I don't want to live. So I'm not going to eat dinner and continue my life. So those are the 4 parts. I'm going to talk about each one a little bit. So the first one is comforting. I found a bunch of different things that helped me. Most of them involve nature. Primarily my dogs. If I actually can give credit to anybody for my recovery, it really would be my dogs. My dogs have saved my life. And if you don't have a dog, go get yourself a dog immediately. But
cats work too.
I'm not sure about that. I'm just saying. I'm a dog person. I've heard this about cats, but I don't believe it.
Cat people, I guess.
I know this is. But my dogs did save my life. In particular, one of my dogs, Winston. After my son David died, he decided that his job in life was to watch over me and take care of me, and he glued himself to my side and stayed there for the next couple years. And I mean, I was like, really, I'd like to pee without you being attached to my knees. But he knew exactly what I was feeling, and it was very obvious. He knew what I was feeling, and he needed a lot of attention. He needed a pet, and I needed to be taken for walks, and I needed to keep him going to the vet, and I needed to make sure he was comfortable and didn't hurt and all those kind of things. So I had to put energy into him, and he put all this energy into me. And I have 2 other dogs as well who I'm crazy about because I'm a crazy dog lady. So the big things that comforted me were natural things. Taking walks outside, water of any kind. A big one for me is creating things. I sing, I'm a classical singer, and singing was incredibly difficult at first. I couldn't even sing. I couldn't read, I couldn't do anything. But eventually singing came back, and singing is a very joyful thing to do. So that was a good thing. Big one is the ocean, and you guys don't seem to have the ocean. I don't know how you live, but so okay, go to the ocean, get dogs. Okay, but I discovered you cannot be in grief when you're in the ocean. I don't know why. You're in the ocean, you don't feel grief. It just somehow is magic. I don't know how or anything, but highly recommend the ocean for the terrible, painful times. Just a caveat, which is I felt that after he died that the only thing I wanted to do, I was joking about this last night, was climb under my bed and drink. And so I stayed away from alcohol for years because I knew that if I opened that bottle, I would dive straight into it and never come out. And luckily I didn't have any access to drugs, or I didn't make any access to drugs. Either way, I'd say your tendency is we want to escape, fight those particular issues, because otherwise you'll end up with a second problem, addiction. Something that really helps me is I make things. And I guess I should include music in this, because I do make music with a lot of other people, and we make very beautiful music, and that's a beautiful, joyful thing, is to make music. The other thing I just make things. I knit, I sew, I do metalworking, I blacksmith, I design spaces, I create beauty in ugly spaces. If you want to have a really ugly room, come over, invite me over, and I'll redo the whole thing. It'll be gorgeous. But it doesn't matter. Like, I used to think artists were people who painted fine oil paints, and I do have a lot of artists in my family. But I didn't ever consider myself an artist until I realized that art is making something new. That's all that art is. So if you want, I'm an artist, I guess, but basically I make things. I'm an artist. I don't know what it is. And I make things when I feel like making them to fit a purpose and to create something beautiful. Pick up something. Start crocheting. Put rocks in a mosaic, make your bathroom beautiful. Do something, because at the end of making something, this incredible thing happens where you absolutely know that it's incredibly beautiful, and you did it, and you know you're a genius. And you're like, I'm a genius. Why doesn't the world recognize my genius? It lasts for 5 minutes, and then you're like, Then you're like, okay, now what are we having for supper? But you get 5 minutes of genius, of oh my God, this is great, life is good. So it kind of, another thing, it breaks you out of the grief cycle, is the genius feeling for a few moments. And so I think that's a good thing. Something I really took a long time to learn was to get rid of the people who are negative. And the people who are negative are the people who say, you need to stop talking about this. I'm sick of hearing about this. And they not say it verbally, but you know perfectly well what they're saying. Just shut up. I've heard enough about your dead kid. You need to get rid of those people. So get rid of the people who don't want to hear about it, or the people who actively say the aggressive things, like God needs another angel, or God has a plan for everything, or there's silver cloud, linings to every cloud, which actually is true, but I don't want to hear from them. But any of those things, I think the worst one was about 2 weeks after David died. I was walking my dogs, and my neighbor said to me, so was he saved?
Oh,
I was like, lady, I know theology, and I know exactly what you just asked me. You asked me whether he's going to heaven or hell, because he's going to make you feel better whether he's going to heaven or hell somehow in your twisted little mind. So I did look at her. I said, no, actually, he was not saved. But at any rate, I learned only after probably 6 years a very simple technique to the people who are saying the horrible things, the things that make you feel uncomfortable, like, why don't you get over it, you need to move on, all those things, is this: stop. I don't know why. I've done it twice now. Stop. And I did repeat, I'm to pretend you didn't say that. And then but just saying stop. In actuality, those people are being rude to you. I think we have this politeness thing going on, I don't want to hurt them or offend them. Why? They're saying a horrible thing about your kid going to hell. Stop. They aren't allowed to say that. And you're allowed to say, don't say that. So, it's my new thing. Stop. Big one was talking about grief. Find those people, not the people I just talked about. Find the people who will listen, who will allow you to talk about your child. Go to this support group. Find a good grief counselor. Find incredible family and friends. Find people who will let you talk about it. If you don't talk about it, what I found in people in my life, I won't put this on tape, people in my life did not want me to talk about it. And I became invisible because I was just this mass of thought and emotion about my own child, and it was totally shut down because people didn't want to hear about it and kind of really were like, do not talk about it. First of all, it negated me. I disappeared. And negated my son. He disappeared because we couldn't talk about him. So force the issue. Talk about your kid all the time. Mention what he would do, what he liked, what she did, what she liked, what she was good at, what she would laugh at this joke. Mention your child all the time. Use your child's name. And if people don't like it, get rid of those people. You know, which is hard to do, but do it, even if they're related to you. This is a big one. I think you already have incredible grief counselors, but if you don't have a great grief counselor, get rid of the bad ones. I had one guy who first came and he wanted us to go bowling. He said, you guys need to get up and have more fun. This was like 3 weeks after my son had died. Not a lot of fun going on here. Another one told me after 3 years, she got very upset. I went back to her. I said, I'm really having a terrible time. I'm so racked with grief. She said, David would not want you to grieve. You've got to stop grieving. David would not want you to grieve. And I went back to my support group and I said, I don't know what just happened there, because I, at that point, wasn't stepping back enough to understand. And I said, but I just felt really terrible. I just didn't like, and our grief support person said, utterly negated your grief. You're not allowed to grieve. That person decided you don't need to grieve, chose don't grieve. I'm like, oh, okay, right, that makes sense. I didn't go back to see that person. Anyway, I did find an incredible grief counselor who has listened to me for years and years, and a big one is he has said, you're not crazy, you're not crazy. I do have a joke that I tell him that my straitjacket is in the closet, this little closet in the room. I'm like, my straitjacket's in there, are you ready to bring it out? And he was like, not yet. So far he said not yet. But he claims I'm not crazy, and that's because so much of what we think is so unbelievably weird and new and huge and going against everything we think we know and believe and think, that it feels crazy, but actually it's not. Okay? Crazy is different. So comforting yourself is finding comfort in something, making things, talking about it, finding a great grief counselor, finding a support group. And then here's the weird part, which I hope you don't throw things at me. Do you guys have anything to throw? Okay. This is the part Jack told me when I first went to see him, is he said, you have to have a new relationship with your son. And I was like, right, sure, buddy. I really did. I almost never went back to see him because I was like, he's not, I don't know where he got his degree, but whatever. I found a new way to have a relationship with my son. And it has taken so long for my brain to crack open and push away the thoughts that I thought I knew to be true. I was very non-religious. This is not a talk about religion, by the way. I was very non-religious. I was very scientific, even though I'm not a scientist. I sort of think, are there longitudinal studies which prove that? Turns out, if I threw away all of that sort of scientist thinking and allowed myself to think things I'd never thought before, everything changed. So first there was Jack, and then I read some books, which I can tell you about later, but they are about the idea that consciousness is not directly connected to the brain. There's an incredible amount of scientific evidence, here's my science part, that consciousness is separate from our physical brain. And whether you go to heaven or hell or whether you stay in eternity, that doesn't even matter to me. I don't care about that. What I care about is that once I read 3 different books by major scientists, looking at tons of studies about how people continue to think after they're clinically dead, which is impossible, my brain sort of broke and it said, what if consciousness is separate from the brain? That would mean that death is just the death of the body. And it's not the death of the person, it is the death of the human organism, the animal. And I didn't see how that could possibly be true. It just wasn't possible. I looked for David everywhere. I screamed and screamed. I think that Jack calls the car therapy. I screamed in that car day after day after day, give him back, and where are you, David? Where are you? I questioned everybody I could possibly think of. It was the search for where he was that was really at the base of my torment. And I do think that the separation from your child, the complete absence of your child, is the most hideous, painful part of this whole deal. I'm never going to see my child again. They're gone. I'm never going to see them again. And that is unbearable. That is at the root, I think, of our grief, that we'll not see our child. If you say, oh, he's in Europe and I'm going to see him in 3 weeks or a month or 2 years, you can handle it. You can't handle somehow, I'll never see you. So, sorry, let me just get to where I am in this thing. I've started to understand that we have like a pinpoint of understanding. I'm a little tiny pinpoint of understanding in the universe. And the reason is I can only see and understand with my brain, my eyes, my ears. I have absolutely no idea. I'll tell you there's something behind me, but I actually have no idea if something's behind me. It could be a dragon behind me. It could be a monster behind me. I only understand what I see and hear with my physical animal body. And you're having a completely different experience. You're seeing with your ears and eyes, and someone 10,000 miles away is having the same thing. All of us experience it. And there's so much more to understand than what we ourselves believe to be true. We are only understanding a tiny, tiny thing. Just what I see in this room. I don't even know if anything's happening in the room over there. I don't even know if there is a room over there. Maybe it's like an abyss. Who knows? There's no way of knowing because I only can see what's happening with my eyes and understand what's happening with my eyes. And that actually isn't everything. There's so much we don't understand. When I started realizing that I was only judging everything had to be what I could prove with my own ears, my own eyes, my own brain, and what if I didn't do that and I sort of said, maybe I don't know. Maybe there's something else out there. I don't know. It broke open the concept of death, that death is not death. It's an illusion. And that, again, backed by scientific evidence, quantum physics talks about all of this stuff. Quantum physics, all that we're seeing is an illusion. There isn't time. There are particles that are bound together inextricably forever. There are particles that react. I sort of feel like David's a particle, and I feel like you are particles that I am connected with. That doesn't make sense scientifically. But quantum physics has shown that all of this illusion, this reality is in fact an illusion. And we all believe it. We're all having breakfast and stuff. And I'm saying that we continue living. It's not like we're going to not feel life and feel our bodies. But if we can maintain the thought at the same time of being physical, that there's a lot more that's not physical, what it does is it helps with the grief. Because then you can start saying, wait a second, if there isn't death, David's still alive. He's there. He just doesn't have a body anymore. But in fact, he's in a better place because he gets to see a lot of the stuff that I don't see. He understands things on a level that I can't even imagine because he's not bound by that human body any longer. Once I started really accepting the thought, this took so long, accepting the thought that possibly he wasn't dead. It wasn't over. That was the end of his story. He was a 22-year-old who was dead, but that he is a being who is continuing and is understanding a heck of a lot more and seeing a lot more and maybe doing a lot cooler things than I am doing right now. He has a lot more opportunities than I am having, which is crazy. It's just so crazy. I know it's crazy, but once it all comes together, you're like, whoa, if I just throw away what I thought I knew and just sort of allow myself to sit with this new idea, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. My new mantra is, the impossible is possible. And I do say it, I say it every day. The impossible is possible. All the things that I thought were true turn out not to be true. And all the things that I knew were not true might actually be true. I actually have no idea anymore. Anything is possible. Like a unicorn could walk in the door, is it locked? I don't know what's going to happen. And I realize that's true. And once I started allowing my heart to make decisions and my intuition to make decisions instead of just my brain, David's dead, David's dead. If I allowed my intuition to make the decisions and understand things, that I learned so much more, and my grieving process on a purely personal level has been transformed. So I no longer believe that David is dead. I believe that David is literally alive in every possible way except with a physical body. He doesn't have a physical body. He is alive. And this whole quantum physics thing, showing how particles are entangled, David is me. He is part of me. I believe that David is speaking to you right now. I know that's weird. And he's got even more swear words than I do. So I'll try to keep him at bay. I felt like I wanted to be like him. That's when I made a decision about 4 years ago. I'm going to be like David. David was the most brave, adventurous person. And I was going to be like him. And he was a weird guy. And I'm like, I'm going to be weird like him. It turns out I already am weird. But being like him makes me doubly weird. So now it's more than that. It's more like I am him and he is me. I am my parents. Think about this. How many times, for those people especially whose parents are dead, how many times a day do you hear your parents' commentary on what you're doing? My dad wouldn't like this. My mom thinks that's cool. My dad hates that. I hear that stuff all day, and I suddenly realized that's because they're part of me, like literally part of me. My parents are part of me. And that's an amazing idea. That's an amazing idea, that we are all literally part of each other. I did not want to be the hippie woo-woo person who was being conned by religion or like witch doctors or laying crystals on myself. I'm like, I'm not no part of that stuff. And here I am talking about the fact that I do believe that we have, some sort of eternal soul, eternal existence of some kind. That is so amazing that I am saying those words. I can't even tell you, because it's not something I could have ever imagined myself saying. It wasn't possible. My father was a really amazing guy, and he was my hero. And he was a scientist. At the same time, he was religious. He considered himself to be a mystic. He used the words mystic. He was a mystic. Mystic basically means you don't know. Could be anything. All sorts of things can happen that you don't understand. You can't explain everything. It's unknowable with our human minds. My dad was a very, very solidly grounded guy, and he considered himself to be a mystic. That only occurred to me 2 days ago. And I suddenly thought, yeah, I can go with that. I'm going to probably call it magic or something, but it's basically the same idea. Anything can happen, and we don't understand it. So what this has done for me, it's taken away that terrible grief. The unbearable grief is now gone because I talked to David for years. Now I talk to David, and I'll leave this up to you to figure this out. I hear him talking back to me. If, like, sort of with my heart, I hear what he's saying. And I have an ongoing relationship with my dead kid. And he's with me all the time. Sometimes I am overcome with a desire to see his body, to give him a hug, to take care of that baby that I washed and, did all those things. As a human, that's terribly hard. But that is getting less and less and less constantly. I am now filled with, I think this knowledge has led to this joy. Like, I'm living with my kid, I'm living with my parents, we're all part of, they're all together in me. I'm them, they're me. And when I go to places, I sing at a lot of concerts, and I always think when I'm in a concert, Daddy, do you like this? Hey, what do you think about this piece? And I can sort of feel them like it's too modern, or something like that. Or, yeah, I love Mozart, but couldn't you do Bach? I talk to my parents all the time, and now I feel like they're talking back. And I certainly feel that David is talking back. And how did I get there? I particularly did, and I'm going to leave you to look this up. It's called IADC. It's Induced After, no, I don't even know what it means, by Dr. Alan Bodkin. He is a guy who wrote a book about after-death experiences, and he does a treatment with people, which my therapist did with me, and it really transformed me. There are therapists here who do that. I recommend that. If you need to go see a witch doctor, go see a witch doctor. You need to see a priest, go see a priest. IADC. Yeah. Bodkin, Bodkin. And that in particular was very instrumental in really shifting me from grief into joy, was that treatment. But it doesn't matter how you get to the point where you believe your child is real and tangible and alive. If you have to lie to yourself, lie to yourself. It doesn't matter. And you're allowed to believe your lies. You are allowed to believe that your child has a relationship with you and is alive on every level. And you can do anything. You can meditate. You can go see Tibetan monks. I'm not in any way advocating religion, trust me. I'm advocating quantum physics. So find a way that you can connect to your child, because as I said before, it's the absence that's that terrible pain. Find a way for there to be no absence, and do whatever you have to do to make there be no absence, because your child isn't absent and you're allowed to believe that. Here's the incredible part. If you don't believe death exists, most people at the root of their living are afraid of death. That's really, like, I have so many friends right now in all sorts of different problems, and one friend in particular is just really in a state of terror. And what she's really afraid of is that her husband is going to die. And it can either be your own death or other people's deaths, but people base many of the decisions that they make about life on avoiding death. It's not going to happen. I'm going to keep it at bay. I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to go do anything I can. I'm going to worry myself sick in order to avoid death. Well, obviously, death can't be avoided. But here's the cool thing about my thinking. Now that I have this bizarre belief that death doesn't really exist, I am not afraid of death. And let me go back. One part of that is this crazy thought. If you can come up with three scenarios for the death thing. Either you're not afraid of death because it's already happened. Hate to say it, guys, but we are the people, the worst stuff has happened. It's happened. Our kids have died. It's terrible. It's already happened. What do we have to be afraid of? The worst stuff's already happened. It can't get worse than that. It's our kids, our own children have died. There's no more fear of that. Here's second alternative. If we die, when I die, this terrible thing I'm afraid of, I'm going to see the person I love more than anybody in the whole universe. I get to go see my kid. Oh my God. Welcome death, right? Or third scenario, maybe death doesn't actually exist. Don't have to be afraid of it. So here's the thing, is that if that fear of death is not controlling your life, and fear is really what controls most people's lives, you are in an enviable situation. You don't have to have fear anymore. I don't have fear anymore. Weird. I'm not afraid of things anymore. What do I have to be afraid of? I can do anything now. And now, so my whole life is now beginning because I'm not afraid of anything. I don't have to be afraid. If I want to go get a PhD, I'll go get a PhD. If I want to be a scuba diver, I'll go be a scuba diver. If I want to be a great artist, I'll be a great artist. If I want to write poetry, I'll write poetry. If I want to, it doesn't matter. I want to learn ballet at the age of 70. I'll go do that because I don't have fear anymore. And if you don't have fear, you can do anything. So your life is no longer limited to what you expect it to be and what it's got to be and what you know it to be. It's just go do whatever you want. And part of that for me has been finding a purpose. I felt so hopeless. I literally wanted to die for years and years and years. I thought 5 minutes from now, if I am not dead, I'm going to be really angry because I want to be dead. There is nothing here. I don't want to live for 5 minutes. After my son died, after 4 years, my husband of 31 years left me, didn't like to see my grieving. I lost my house because of this. This wonderful dog I told you about died. I lost my job. I ended up on the edge of cancer and had to have major surgery. And I dragged, people were talking about someone was telling me about their car, children's car. I dragged my son's motorcycle to the side of the road a week after I had a hysterectomy. I pushed this motorcycle to the side of the road and wrote free on it. I was by myself. I had nothing to do. And I moved to this little tiny apartment in Providence where I live by myself. And the two dogs and I looked at each other and thought, what the hell just happened? I had 3 children, 3 dogs, 2 cats, a husband, a job, good health, and all of it was gone. Every single bit was gone. And it was really hard. And that I am saying now that I have a new life filled with joy is pretty remarkable. I mean, I think it's remarkable. And I hope that you will also feel that. David has given me now a purpose for living. That was the other thing. Jack said to me, well, ask him what your purpose in life is. I'm like, oh God, Jack, again with the stupid questions. So I asked David, what's my purpose in life? So he told me what I'm supposed to do. I thought it would involve drinking wine, sitting on the couch watching YouTube, but it didn't have to do with that. I was like, come on. Which has to do with helping other people, healing other people's hearts, showing people the light. I was like, oh God, this has nothing to do with wine. And the other purpose I have is I get to be me for the first time in my life. I have felt ashamed of myself my whole life, who I was. I felt so ashamed of myself. I just could never fit into a box. I couldn't do it. I had weird parents. I came from a weird family. I'm a weird person. I'm too outspoken. I'm too opinionated. I'm too interested in unusual things. I mean, how many women do you know who blacksmith? I mean, really, seriously, look at my nails. I do my nails. No one does that. I can now be me, and that judgment about myself, because of my lack of fear and because I kind of get a bigger picture now, it's gone. I don't care sort of that I've gained weight. I don't care if I'm having a bad hair day, which I constantly do, or that I'm getting wrinkles, or that I've said something stupid, or that I look like an idiot, or someone doesn't like me. I don't care anymore. Finally, I don't care. It's gone because that doesn't matter. I'm not saying this is perfect. I still feel like when someone doesn't like me, I'm like, oh, they didn't like me. But I don't feel it the way I used to feel it. And that is going away. Like, I'm sort of like, really? Okay, fine. You know. So I encourage you to do the following 4 things. Find comfort. Tell everybody about your grief. Find some way of having a relationship with your child where your child is alive. And it may not look anything like the way I have sort of semi-described it to you. But believe it and allow yourself to believe it. If nothing else, you need the comfort of believing your child is alive. And that's okay. And the last thing is, find what you're going to do. You got the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be anything exciting. You have to go save, the poor in India. But what are you going to do? You can do anything now. You have no longer any fear. There's no reason to feel fear. Just go off and explore your life. So I wanted to leave you with a final quote, which is something that just sticks with me, and I haven't tattooed it on myself, which is, only in the darkness do you see the stars. And we are all in the darkness. So thank you very